I really believe there's a reason why all of us are sitting in this room tonight. It's not by chance. You all chose to come here this evening for whatever reason. And I really believe that there's a reason why we're all here, and that's because we want something better. We want something better for Mauna Kea. And what I'm going to show you tonight is a lot of information, heavy in information, and it's long. But you cannot compress 50 years of Mauna Kea into 3 slides in 10 minutes. It's just impossible to do. Without question, I guarantee you, everybody that will leave here tonight will learn 10 things that you never knew about Mauna Kea and its history. And I think that's the purpose, is education, so that the community can make well-informed decisions about how we malama and we take care of such a special place that means so much to so many different people. So again, mahalo nui for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to the conversations. This is kind of the format. So Representative Chris Todd and myself are here. I represent all of you in the Hawaii State Senate if you lived in Hilo, in District 1. Representative Todd represents half of Hilo. And so both of us, one of the youngest legislators in the Capitol, and we're ambitious, and we try to solve problems. And that's one of the reasons why both of us wanted to come here this evening to spend some time with you. The presentation is over an hour. There's really no way to get around it. But I would indulge you to sit through it, to listen. If you cannot see and you're in the back row, no shame. Come up to the front row. Because it's hard to see in the back there because there's a lot of text. So I see Gordon Takaki, and Gordon, you might have to move forward. But thank you so much for coming, and thank you, Sue. I saw Aaron Chung here as well. I don't know if he stuck around, but mahalo nui. I would ask that you hold questions to the end, so we can just get through it, get you the information you need, so we can get to the Q&A, which is always the exciting part. It was obvious to me when the bill was in the Senate, in one of the committees, and then people had come to testify that there was a lot of misconceptions about the bill. Some had never even read the bill. They didn't understand the history of Mauna Kea and why we're in this position today. And I felt for them. And I told them that, if you guys took the time to come all the way down here from Waianae, in the middle of your day, sit in traffic, pay for parking, find a hearing room, wait for this hearing, not even understand what just happened, it's obvious that we need to get out of this concrete square building, and we need to get out into the community. And not just start here on Hawaii Island, but take this statewide. And so that's what we're doing. So this is one of many statewide community discussions and listening tours so that we can get feedback. Whether the bill moves forward or not, the feedback is constructive. And I hope that the existing management structure listens and ho'olohes, because there's very important feedback that we're going to share tonight that I hope all of you share tonight. We went to Waimea last night. Tonight we're in Keaukaha. We've gone to Nanakuli, Kapolei, went to Maui, and sat there with the Haleakala hui that stood for against the Pan-STARRS telescope just a few months ago. We'll also touch on a legislative update, kind of to show you where the legislative session is right now. Not just for this, but for anti-terrorism resolutions that are going through the Senate now, or the legislature. It's important to understand the timeline, where bills are now, how you can get involved, because come the 3rd of May, the legislature is over. And everything is either dead or it's going to the governor's desk for signature. So with that being said, I'm going to dive right in and ask you to hold on, because there's a lot of information coming. If you look at this picture here, this is the summit of Mauna Kea. This is the astronomical precinct. If you're an astronomer, or not an astronomer, you might see the world's most powerful telescopes. The 2 twin Kecs are right here. They are the most powerful telescopes in the world, built about 20 years ago, Keck 1, Keck 2. No other place on the planet has built a bigger telescope than the ones that exist on Mauna Kea today, and those are the twin Kecs. You see the opportunity for research. You see the opportunity for discoveries, to look back in time, to try and figure out where we came from as human beings. But if you're Native Hawaiians, in particular, some of them, a lot of them, you see desecration. You see mismanagement. You see years of neglect and abuse, and a community and a government that never listened. Because we built those most powerful telescopes in the world on some of our most sacred lands. Mauna Kea and its summit, especially the highest peaks, were its most revered sacred lands. Ali'i wouldn't even go up there. Those were people were buried. The pu'us. And we cut off those pu'us to build telescopes. Did significant damage to the Vikiu bug habitats and different things there. And we did it over and over, from 1968 well into the 1990s. And so you need to understand that, because that's a very critical piece of this puzzle. Kukaha'ula, Pu'ulilinoi, these are the highest peaks of the Mauna. They are the highest peaks in all of Polynesia, and they are the most sacred peaks. And we damage them, and today there are telescopes that sit on them. There are telescopes that do not sit on some of our other pu'u. I'd like to start with the bottom line up front. Where are we at today, and how do we get here? Here's a couple facts of where we are right now. So in October of 2017, the contested case hearing ended here in Hilo. Judge Ricky Miyamano affirmed the decision of the land board, sent that to the land board, and the land board affirmed that decision again and approved the conservation district use permit for the 30-meter telescope. That immediately was appealed, and that was sent directly to the state Supreme Court. In the middle part of October, Governor Ige informally sent a letter to Mayor Harry Kim, because Mayor Kim has been publicly supportive of the 30-meter telescope, based around this Peace Park vision, this plan he has for Mauna Kea based on an international peace park. I'm not even sure how to explain it, but that's what he has said. Okay, so Governor Ige sends him a letter and says, hey, are you willing to take the lead on Mauna Kea around this vision that you have for the mountain? The mayor deliberates with that, and at the end of October, he sends the governor back a letter and says, I accept. I accept this responsibility for Mauna Kea, and my plan is to talk to people and to create an advisory committee to advise the governor on what to do, or the existing management structure. What's important to note, with all due respect to the mayor of the county of Hawaii, and I appreciate what he's trying to do, he has no jurisdictional authority on Mauna Kea. Zero. None. There is nothing that Mayor Kim can implement at the Office of Mauna Kea Management. There's nothing he can implement at the state legislature. There's really nothing the governor can implement to change the management structure of Mauna Kea. The County of Hawaii has no jurisdictional authority on Mauna Kea. So that's important. November of 2017, OA has been deliberating for years with the existing management structure, at least since 2009, when Act 132 passed. And basically they've come to an impasse, and they filed a lawsuit against the state of Hawaii and the University of Hawaii, alleging years of mismanagement on Mauna Kea. In January of 2018, the legislature is about to begin, and all these state departments, there's 18 of them, submit their budgets to the legislature. And in the Attorney General's budget, he asked for just under $2 million to be appropriated this year, state general funds, taxpayer dollars, to the Attorney General in anticipation of widespread and further disobedience and civil disobedience on Mauna Kea in the event that the 30-meter telescope is approved in the next 6 to 9 months. And so basically the Attorney General is already posturing based on what happened in 2015 and what he is anticipating is going to happen again in 2018. In January 2018, the State Senate introduces Senate Bill 3090, calling for a new management authority on Mauna Kea. In March of 2018, just this past month, I'm sure you all read it, front page, I think 2 Sundays ago, the Hawaii Tribune Herald reported that Mayor Harry Kim came up with his advisory committee. I met with the mayor in October. I was one of the people he spoke to. I can tell you right now, I'm not one of those 9 people. Maybe there's somebody who's one of the 9 people in his audience, but nobody knows because the mayor decided to not release the names until those 9 members can figure out really why they're there and what they're supposed to do. And so that confuses me as well. Just last week, there are 2 things that are sitting at the state Supreme Court right now. The Conservation District Use Permit for TMT and the sublease, the TIO sublease that the University of Hawaii agreed to with TIO, 30-meter International Observatories. It's a Delaware Limited Liability Corporation. That sublease was, Kalani Forest requested a contested case. And the land board determined that he wasn't due a contested case. And so that went to Judge Glenhara, who disagreed with the land board. And I hope I'm not getting my fact confused. But regardless of what happened, Judge Nakamura, I'm sorry. That went to the state Supreme Court. And so what is at the state Supreme Court right now is the TIO sublease and the conservation district use permit. And those are really big decisions by the state Supreme Court. They heard oral arguments on the sublease last week. They concluded those oral arguments, and now the Supreme Court is deliberating whether or not to approve the TMT sublease. You need two things to move TMT, the CDUP and the sublease. They're not going to move without those two things, we hope. The bottom line is pressure is rapidly building. To me, it's untenable pressure. It's arguably why we're all here tonight, because we want to learn, or we want to find out answers, or we want to find out what we're doing in the legislature. But the reason why is there's no leadership, in my opinion. There's no leadership and nobody taking charge to try to figure out a future path of balance on the mountain. There is no plan, and any proposed fixes are really Band-Aid fixes. I thought the House was going to, without disrespect to my colleague, introduce something a little bit more broad on Mauna Kea. But a bill was introduced to require 4x4 access to the summit in conjunction with 4x4 access to Waipio Valley. And that's really it. I think that's a good step. It's one of many things that should happen. But really, they're all just proposed Band-Aid fixes on how to fix the issues on Mauna Kea. I'm going to talk about some land facts, I'm going to talk about history, and then I'm going to talk about the bill. Mauna Kea, from its submerged lands to the seafloor to 30,000 feet, is the highest mountain in the entire world, higher than Mount Everest. There are unique geological features on Mauna Kea. It's a beautiful, amazing specimen. Whether you go from under the ocean, through its forests, through its subalpine deserts, to the summit of the mountain, there are ecosystems that exist nowhere on the planet. The palila bird, the vikiu bug, the silver sword are unique species that exist on Mauna Kea. On Mauna Kea, there are 263 documented archaeological sites. There are over 336 find spots. That makes Mauna Kea the highest concentration in all of Polynesia of archaeological sites. There's not another place in all of Polynesia that has more archaeological significance in a highly concentrated area than the summit of the mountain. State Historic Preservation designates in 2000 traditional cultural properties. Those are Kukaha'ula, Pu'ulilinois, the summits, and Lake Waiau. On Mauna Kea, hydrology is important. If there's anything that is precious in Hawaii, it's land and it's water. Those two things. If you've never read Land and Power in Hawaii, highly recommend you do. Why is hydrology important? Because Mauna Kea is the pico of our island. It is where water sources begin. It's where rivers flow from. And within the Mauna Kea Science Reserve, there are 5 recognized aquifers. And within the Mauna Kea Astronomical Precinct, there is one aquifer, which is the Waimea Aquifer. Now, why that is important is because we have cesspools on the summit of Mauna Kea and at Halepohaku. Or we have septic tank leach fields, both of which deposit either treated leachate or raw sewage waste into the Mauna Kea aquifer. Now, there has been huge debates on whether or not there's scientific fact that the fluids for the last 50 years, the waste for the last 50 years, has affected Mauna Kea's water table, or has flowed into those hydrology aquifers, or has gone into Lake Waiau. To me, it doesn't matter. We're trying to eliminate cesspools in this state by the year 2050. There's 90,000 statewide. The highest concentration are on this island. But we have cesspools right on the top of Mauna Kea. And I've challenged the telescopes to fix that. And I hope they've heard what I've had to say. But that is a big issue, because you have to remember that Mauna Kea's cultural and spiritual significance. The Native Hawaiian community, before I jump to that, Mauna Kea, make no mistake, Canary Islands, La Palma, wherever, doesn't hold a candle to Mauna Kea. It's positioned in the northern hemisphere at 20 degrees north and 155 degrees east. It's cool air, non-turbulent atmosphere, make it the world's premier site for astronomy. We have something on this island that nobody else on the planet has, and everybody wants to be on. But to the Native Hawaiian community, Mauna Kea is not just a mountain. It is the pico of our entire, it's the embodiment of the Native Hawaiian people. It is where the Kumulipo Papa and Wakea begin. It is the point that the Vau'akua starts. It is where our ancestors are, deities live. It's a very, very special place to the Native Hawaiian community, and that's very important to understand as you're trying to balance that and balance science and astronomy. The Mauna Kea lands are ali'i lands, united by King Kamehameha I and held in trust for about 250 ali'i until 1848, when the first Western concept of dividing lands in these islands takes place at the Great Mahele. That's Kaui Keauli, Kamehameha III, the Great Mahele, when the Mauna Kea lands are placed and designated as government lands of the Kingdom of Hawaii. And it remains like that until January 17, 1893, when the Hawaiian Kingdom is illegally overthrown by the provisional government, and those kingdom crown lands are taken control by the provisional government and held until 1898, when the now Republic of Hawaii cedes 1.8 million acres of those kingdom crown lands to the United States of America through the Newlands Joint Resolution. On April 30th, 1900, a key time in our history happens, and that's the Organic Act, passed by the United States Congress, that in essence created a governmental structure for the state of Hawaii. A legislature, a House, a Senate, rules, whatever. But what Congress passed, they recognized the preciousness of these ceded lands, these kingdom crown lands. And so they placed them in the public trust doctrine. That's where it is created by the United States Congress. And that public trust doctrine specifies really specific things for the use of these 1.8 million acres of ceded lands. They cannot really be used for anything else. Now, those are held by the United States of America until the Admissions Act in 1959, when that public trust doctrine of the Organic Act is part of the Admissions Act and is also part of Hawaii's, the new state's constitution. So these lands are called public trust doctrine lands, and they're held in trust by the state of Hawaii. Now what the United States of America did was they returned at statehood about 1.8 million acres of ceded lands, but they kept the lands that they wanted, that were geographically, strategically valuable to them. And what were those lands? They were the military lands. Hickam Air Force Base, Kaneohe Marine Corps Base, Pearl Harbor. They kept what they wanted, they returned the rest to the state to be held in trust. So the Mauna Kea lands are not just ceded kingdom crown lands, they are part of the public trust doctrine. Those lands are in our Constitution, they are in the Admissions Act. You often refer to them as the 5 F purposes, or what they can be used for. This is what they can be used for. Public schools, public education, benefiting Native Hawaiians. So Native Hawaiians, because I get the race-based thing often, is, you guys gotta wait, because with these public trust doctrine lands, these are specifically to benefit, one of the beneficiaries is the Native Hawaiian people. Now, what's also important to know is the difference between the public trust doctrine and public lands. And if you don't understand that, you're gonna learn it tonight. Because people get that confused all the time. What are public lands and what is the public trust doctrine? Well, we know what the doctrine is now, right? You only can use it for specific purposes. Well, public lands is a Hawaii Revised Statute, chapter 171. It's in this big, fat blue book, and it's an important chapter if you are a Native Hawaiian, because in chapter 171 of the Hawaii Revised Statutes tells you everything about how you can use public lands. And 171.17 specifically states fair market value for public trust, public lands should be determined by an appraiser or an independent appraiser, and I'll tell you why that's important. That's just one of the many things in 171. Now what I'll also note, and we'll talk about tonight, is 171.95, that exempts the University of Hawaii from doing an appraisal on these lands because they are a government agency. Now, at the Constitutional Convention of 1978, you had to determine, they were trying to determine how do you figure out how Native Hawaiians are the beneficiaries for those public lands, because from 59 to 78, nothing was done. So in 1978, they created the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. And they decided, because of the 5 purposes, if you divide them up, that 20% of all revenues from public trust doctrine lands should go to the now created Office of Hawaiian Affairs to benefit Native Hawaiians. That was the purpose for OHA when it was created in 1978. Historical facts for Mauna Kea. How do we get to where we are today? 1957, if you can imagine President Kennedy, the race to the moon, we're racing the Russians, and Hawaii takes its role and place in astronomy when the first telescopes begin construction in 1957 on Haleakala. They had to start there because there was no access road to the summit. So they started on Haleakala. And the telescopes on Haleakala are based on solar observations, right? The house of the rising, it's a place where we go to watch the sunrise. In 1960, there's a devastating tsunami in downtown Hilo that devastates Hilo. And so Governor Quinn, Governor Burns, and the County of Hawaii look at astronomy as an emerging sector to rebuild Hawaii's economy, especially the County of Hawaii's economy. In 1964, the Mauna Kea lands are placed in the Conservation District. And that's important as well, because what that did was it designated and delegated the management authority at the time and the regulatory authority for those lands, the Conservation District lands, to the Department of Land and Natural Resources. In 1964, Governor Burns appoints this 14-member Science and Technology Committee to figure out how we can continue to grow astronomy in the state as an emerging sector. In 64, the state of Hawaii passes Senate Concurrent Resolution 16, calling for the governor to set aside a portion of the Mauna Kea Summit for space and astronomical science activities. This is SCR 16 here. So you can see how this is unfolding in the early 1960s. Now in 1964, there is no summit access road to Mauna Kea, and that's when we start to construct the access road to go to the summit. In 1967, the University of Hawaii creates the Institute for Astronomy based out of the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And in 1968, a key date happens, because that's when the University of Hawaii secures a 65-year master lease for the Mauna Kea Summit. They create the Science Reserve, they designate an observatory in the lease, and that lease is set to terminate on December 31st, 2033, 65 years later, which is about 15 years from now. That's another big issue as well. So how it basically rolls out today is the University of Hawaii has a master lease for the summit. They have management authority over the mountain, but the Department of Land and Natural Resources has regulatory authority over the mountain. So big decisions that start at the Mauna Kea Management Board and ultimately go to the Board of Regents and get approved must go to DLNR and to its land board for consent. That's the process. Now in 1968, 1969, 1970, 3 telescopes pop up pretty quickly. And in 1974, 3 more telescopes start construction. And all of a sudden, people are asking what's going on. It's the first time I could find where people were asking, hey, what's happening on Mauna Kea? Environmentalists, hunters, cultural practitioners, the community, because we now got 6 telescopes going up on the mountain. It gets the attention of Governor Ariyoshi, who basically orders DLNR to come up with a plan for the mountain that did not exist in 1974. And they do, and in 1977 they publish the very first plan for the mountain, and it's called the Mauna Kea Plan. It creates 5 management areas under 3 agencies. In 1979, those 3 telescopes that started construction in 74 get first light. And some of them still exist today. That's the Canada, France, Hawaii telescope, the UCURT, and the NASA infrared. Now in 1981, remember that original 1968 lease? That was for about 13,400 acres. In 1981, they take out about 4,000 acres of that 13,400, and they create the Mauna Kea Ice Age Natural Area Reserve. This today is some of our most pristine, precious lands, is what we call our NARS. That also sits at BLNR. There's about a 4,000 acre NARS that sits up there today. Now in 1982, as the telescopes continue to be built on the mountain, the Board of Regents starts to develop what they now call a research and development plan. And in that plan, they specify 13 telescopes on the mountain. In 1983, the Mauna Kea Science Reserve Complex Development Plan is initiated by the board because the objective now was to guide and control development on the summit. In 85, the land board approves the Mauna Kea Management Plan, but only the management section. The land board never approves the sections dealing with development or telescope number. In 1994, the Subaru starts construction. There's a significant damage to the Vikiu bug habitat on the mountain. In 1995, the BLNR approves that revised management plan, because if you can imagine what 1995 was like, there was no restrictions on commercial tours. It was basically the Wild West. People were going up there, Subaru was being built, trash was all over the place from construction that wasn't cleaned up. But there were illegal tours going up on the mountain, which was not regulated. And so in '95, the Board of Regents and the BLNR revises the management plan to focus on commercial and public use. And for commercial tour operators, it's the first time the BLNR issues a limited number of commercial permits and sets the fee at $2 per person in 1995. Now, the Sierra Club, Nelson Ho, I think I saw Nelson here tonight. Thanks, Nelson. And many others get the attention of a state senator as they're complaining about what's happening on a mountain and nobody's listening. Well, they get the attention of Senator Malama Solomon, who writes and authors and introduces this resolution, Senate Concurrent Resolution 109, calling for an audit of the Mauna Kea Science Reserve. The resolution alleges widespread violations, non-compliance of plans, violating of agreements and permitted uses, also calls for long-term planning of the mountain. Now, the result of this is the 1998 audit, which is the first of what would be now 4 audits on Mauna Kea over the next 20 years. Now, this audit is referred to as it was a bad audit for the University of Hawaii. It was a scathing audit. And basically the consensus of the audit, the summary of it, was that the university focused on development with benefits gained tied to its research program, the Institute for Astronomy, and the Research Corporation of the University of Hawaii. This is text taken right out of the '98 audit. I didn't make this up. Management controls were often late and weakly implemented. Control over public access was weak, and efforts to protect natural resources was piecemeal. The university neglected historic preservation. The Vikiu bug habitat sustained significant damage. Trash from construction cleaned up only after concerns were raised. Old equipment not removed. DLNR needs to improve its protections. And permit conditions, CDUP permit conditions, regulations, and requirements are not enforced, and administrative requirements are often overlooked. So what does the university do? They react to the 1999 Mauna Kea Advisory Committee that was formed by President David McLean. And their answer, or their charge, was, how do you fix this? So they go out into the community, 1999, 2000. Probably community meetings like this, but people were upset. And they wanted answers, they wanted change. And so what does the university come up with? In 2000, a big deal is what is now presented and approved, and that is the Mauna Kea Science Reserve Master Plan. It established the Office of Mauna Kea Management, the Mauna Kea Management Board, the Kahu Council, the Ranger Program. It takes 525 acres of the summit and designates it as an astronomy precinct. Now, 2 facts that you need to know is, I talked about the board can approve something, but it has to go to the land board. So if you can imagine what those 99 meetings were like, you can imagine what June of 2000 was like at UH Hilo when the Board of Regents had to vote on this Mauna Kea Science Reserve Master Plan. And one of the regents that arguably should have voted for it, because he was one of the Native Hawaiians, I'm not sure if he was the only one, but he was definitely one, does not vote for the plan, and he abstains. And that's Nainoa Thompson. In 2001, before I move on to 2001, what's also important to note is this 2000 Mauna Kea Science Reserve Master Plan that is approved by the Board of Regents never gets approved by BLNR. They never approved the 2000 Mauna Kea Science Reserve Master Plan. Now, right around that time, you have the 2 twin keks, the 10 meters. And there is a proposal to anchor the twin keks with these outrigger telescopes, similar to like a canoe, a yako and an ama. And you take 3 on each side, and you anchor the NASA Keck outriggers. You anchor the keks with this outrigger project to increase its intensity, to increase its power, so that it can look, I guess, farther into the universe. And about a year after the Mauna Kea Science Reserve Master Plan is published, the university applies for the NASA Keck Outrigger Conservation District Use Permit. Now, also in 2001, if you remember those 99 meetings that happened, you know, people in the audience were asked, well, what's your plan? Kind of what I might say tonight. If you don't like this plan, then I'm cool with that, but what's your plan? And they asked, hey, what is your plan? Well, in 99, they didn't have a plan. But in 2001, the Royal Order of Kamehameha and Mauna Kea Aina published a temple report. It is the first time I can find where they call for a new management authority on Mauna Kea. Now, that temple report is 76 copies are made. They are delivered to legislators. They are delivered to the land board members. The chair of the land board at the time is now a senator in the Hawaii State Senate. And the plan is pretty much widely disregarded and ends up probably in 76 trash cans. Nobody pays attention to it when they called for a new management authority for Mauna Kea. Now in 2003, whenever you're going to use public lands, county lands, period, you got to do an environmental assessment. Most times, they call it an EA, right? If you're ever going to do major land use, you're going to, do something major on the lands, and it depends on the classification of the lands. It would trigger an environmental impact statement. That's our Chapter 343 of the Hawaii Revised Statutes. Whenever you're going to use federal money, right? Section 102, the Section 102 process, it requires a federal environmental impact statement. Anytime federal money is used, it's supposed to trigger on federal EIS. But instead of doing an EIS, they do an EA. And that EA is, I guess you could say, appealed. And a U.S. district judge rules and finds that the NASA Keck Outrigger environmental assessment failed to address the cumulative impact on Mauna Kea. This is also the time where the university was being requested to do a comprehensive management plan, that the 2000 science plan was not adequate, that they should do a CMP, a comprehensive management plan. The university takes a position that a CMP is not required and the 2000 master plan is adequate. Now that CDUP that they applied for is issued by the board in 2003 and a contested case begins. In 2004, NASA decides, you know what, we're going to prepare an environmental impact statement, a federal one, the only one ever done on Mauna Kea because of what this U.S. district judge ruled, that the EA was inadequate. In 2004, the federal EIS is done. The contested case ends for the Outrigger CDUP. BLNR affirms the CDUP, and there's an appeal to the state Third Circuit Court. In 2005, NASA publishes the findings of the federal environmental impact statement and concludes that 30 years of astronomy has caused significant, substantial, and adverse harm on the mountain. Now, those should be trigger words for the 8 conditions required for a conservation district use permit. And that is what the federal EIS concluded. In 2005, the state auditor looks at Mauna Kea a second time, and they conclude that some improvements have been made, but more needs to be done. That the University of Hawaii lacks management challenges. It lacks administrative rulemaking, weak permit monitoring. There's been now violations of conservation district use permits, whether it was a teaspoon of mercury spilled, fluid from vehicles. There's been violations of CDUP permits and fines on the University of Hawaii. No protections in place for cultural natural resources due to lack of authority for rulemaking. I'm going to come back to rulemaking in the next few slides, but remember that, administrative rulemaking. Management plans need to be updated specifically for the science reserve. UH must provide increased transparency and accountability. DLNR needs to provide a mechanism to ensure compliance with lease and permit requirements. The 1981, remember we took out 4,000 acres to create the NAR? It's 2005. There is no management plan for the Mauna Kea Ice Age Natural Area Reserve, and it's needed now. DLNR divisions are not coordinating efforts to protect natural resources. There's multiple jurisdictional agencies, and they're all working independently. In 2006, NASA withdraws funding for the Keck Outrigger Telescope project, and State's Third Circuit Court, Judge Glenn Hara, reverses the BLNR approved CDUP. Right, so remember where the CDUP was challenged here? There was an appeal to the State Third Circuit Court in 2004. When 2006, Judge Glenn Hara reverses that CDUP, and he basically orders the university to do a comprehensive management plan. You're not going to do nothing on the summit ever again until you do a CMP, and they reverse the CDUP for Keck Outrigger. Never matter, because Keck Outrigger left. What does the university do when basically ordered by Judge Hara to do a CMP? They appeal the decision. They still say our 2000 plan is good enough. Well, what happens in 2007? There's a project that's starting to come around for us, for many of us that can remember that, and that's the new generation large telescope, or what would now be called the 30-meter telescope. Yeah? And there's a report that's published in 2007 called the Keystone Report. I'll show you it tonight. And it talked about assessing the risks for siting the TMT on Mauna Kea. 2007, called the Keystone Report, right? So the university changes their decision right around this same time withdraws their appeal, and decides to begin to do a CMP. Why did they have to do that? No CMP, no TMT. You cannot build if you don't do a CMP. So they decide to do one. In 2009, they issued that CMP, and it's a good comprehensive management plan. The Edith Kanakole Foundation is contracted to do the cultural piece. I would highly recommend you read it. The Board of Regents approves the CMP. The BLNR approves the CMP. So this thing is legit now. And today, this is the body, this is basically the source document that exists that governs what happens on Mauna Kea. In that comprehensive management plan is over 100 or many, many action items that need to be done. The university specified, hey, these things gotta get done. Well, how are they gonna get done? They talk about that in 2010. But before we do that, remember I talked about the admin rules from 2005 in that state audit that the university lacks administrative rulemaking? Well, the legislature hears that. And in 2009, they passed Act 132, giving the university the authorization to work with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs and promulgate admin rules. And this is a really big deal because the power given to the University of Hawaii to promulgate admin rules is a unique power because it doesn't have to go to the land board for approval. If they make an admin rule, they take it out for public hearing and comment, the governor approves it, pow, that's the rule. It also created the Mauna Kea Land Special Fund, which is where commercial revenue fees go and some other fees as well. And these still exist today. Now that special fund has to be used for operations, it can't be used for CIP, new construction projects, things like that. So that was done in 2009. Big year for OMKM. CMP completed, fully authorized. Legislature gave us power to do admin rules. Things are looking good. So in 2010, how are we going to implement the CMP? Well, they published in February of 2010 an implementation plan. And in that implementation plan, they take those 50, 75, 100 action items, and they divide them into the most immediate ones that need to get done. And they say these immediate action items need to be done in 1 to 3 years. Some are short term, some are immediate, got to get done right now. Some are long term, short term, medium term, long term. The immediate action items, some of which are the most culturally difficult ones to solve. Yeah? And we'll talk about what some of those are tonight. Scattering of human remains, building of ahu or ku'ahu, where you can place ho'okupu, where you cannot. So these, per their February 2010 implementation plan, should have been done within 1 to 3 years, because they were labeled as immediate action items. 5 months later, in September of 2010, before the admin rules are done, before we even start on the CMP implementation action items, or at least complete them, what does the University of Hawaii do in September of 2010? They apply for the TMT Conservation District Use Permit. In 2011, DLNR issues that TMT CDUP, and we obviously know where that has gone today. Now, the 30-meter telescope needs the master lease beyond 2033. Make no mistake about it. And arguably, so do the telescopes that exist up there today, some of which still have many more years of useful life, some of which would like to be repurposed, like the Canada-France and their spectroscopic telescope that can make the Canada-France a more powerful telescope as well. But they need a lease beyond 2033 to do that. So the university knows that. So 20 years prior to the expiration of the master lease, the University Board of Regents chair sends a letter to DLNR asking for the mutual cancellation of 2 leases, the master lease on the summit and the Halepohaku lease, which today is scheduled to expire in 2041. They want to cancel the master lease, want to cancel the Halepohaku lease, tie the 2 leases together, and get another 65-year lease on the mountain. And they asked for that 20 years prior. So that goes to DLNR. It's challenged. Kalani Flores and others challenge and say, no, you cannot do another master lease. You got to do an environmental impact statement. Well, DLNR decides we don't need to do one. OCCL, Office of Conservation Coastal Land, says, approved, cancel the master lease, no need to do EIS. Land Division, approved, cancel master lease, no need to do EIS. It goes to Chair Bill Ayla, who's the DLNR chair at the time, and he approves it. Cancel the master leases, no need to do environmental impact statement. The university steps back. Maybe they learn a lesson from Super Ferry. They listen, and they say, you know what? They go to the board in December of 2013 and say, defer action on our request. We will do an environmental impact statement. And so that's where we are today, on the master lease, where the university is taking that process out to the community through the EIS process. In 2014, the state auditor for the third time looks at Mauna Kea. And they conclude that UH and DLNR have made progress, but some issues remain unresolved. Now, these 3 audits and the next one, I cannot put 100 slides on this thing. So if you want to read the audits, I suggest you do them yourself. These are some things that I took out of them. The number one thing in the 2014 audit was that the University of Hawaii has not promulgated administrative rules. Remember, the state legislature gave them power to do it in 2009. It's 2014, and the administrative rules are not done yet. The university lacks enforcement authority to protect the mountain from impact of public and commercial activities. In 2000, we created the Mauna Kea Ranger Program. And there's about 9 rangers up there today. They work really, really hard, former law enforcement members, but they have no enforcement powers. They can't cite you, they can't issue you a ticket, they can't stop you from going someplace. They're awesome ambassadors of aloha. They work super hard in a really tough climate, but they can't do the job that they might have well been intended to do because they don't have any enforcement powers on Mauna Kea. They are unlike rangers in the Volcano National Park or other rangers at some of our other parks. Now, in absence of rules, the university uses unauthorized permits and informal agreements to manage commercial tour activities. So what am I talking about here? In 1995, we started regulating commercial tours, DLNR. In 2000, DLNR gives that authority to the University of Hawaii. In 2005, 2006, the University of Hawaii issues 8 or so commercial tour permits and increases that $2 fee to $6. Now, that never goes to the land board for consent, and so there is a dispute between the state auditor that those were unauthorized permits and informal agreements governing those commercial tour activities. They also state that UH and DLNR should work to renegotiate the existing subleases, which arguably they're trying to do right now, to include provisions addressing stewardship and other things that should be in those subleases. They also say, remember those immediate action items in the comprehensive management plan, in their implementation plan of February 2010? Well, in 2014, the state auditor says, hey, you guys got to complete the comprehensive management plan actions no later than 2016. And I'll show you in the 2017 audit what those are, because these are them. So in the 2017 audit, this is July, this is now the 4th audit in 20 years of the management structure of Mauna Kea, conclude that UH and DLNR has partially implemented 4 of our 2014 audit recommendations, but 3 remain open. One of them is these CMP action items. The UH has still not adopted administrative rules on Mauna Kea. Remember, we gave them a power to do it in 2009. 2017, we still have no admin rules. Now the university will say, hey, our hands were tied. We were handcuffed by Governor Ige in 2015 in the summer when he stopped the EIS process, when he stopped the admin rule process, and we couldn't move forward. My argument to that would be what happened from 2010 to 2014. Commercial tour use permit fee schedule has not been adopted or approved by the UH or Board of Regents. So this is a dispute between the auditor who says they're illegal. The university has collected millions of dollars in commercial tours and fees that might need to be returned. And the state auditor or the university that says no, they are legal. And so that's a dispute in there. Also, an effort to renegotiate the general lease or sublease permits has not occurred due to the EIS not being completed. Now, those admin rules have been drafted. I haven't seen them, but I understand the university is getting ready to take those out for public comment soon. Now, these CMP action items, these immediate action items, these are them. This is language out of the 2014 audit, straight out. Recommendation number 4, that UH should complete the comprehensive management plan actions, the implementation of which under the CMP plan is scheduled as immediate, as soon as possible, but no later than the end of 2016. So the state auditor in 2014 is saying, hey, bro, you guys got to get this stuff done. You guys said in 2010 you was going to do me 1 to 3 years. It's 2014, this thing is still not done. So 2017, the auditor comes back and they say, hey, you guys got to get this stuff done. And what are they? Like I talked about, they are some of the most difficult cultural issues to deal with that Kahuku Mauna and the board has to deal with. The placement and removal of offerings, the scattering of cremated remains, the building of or taking the lead in determining the appropriateness of constructing new Hawaiian culture features, the building of ahu or ku'ahu or the stacking of rocks. How do you go to a cultural practitioner who is guaranteed by our Constitution to be able to practice their cultural rights, where you can build an ahu or where you cannot, where you can put ho'okupu, where you can scatter your kupuna if you want to go up there and do that. Difficult things, but they should have been done. And the university said, we got them. December 2017, we will have them done. Right here. This is March 2018. Raise your hand if you think they're done. They're not done. Almost 9 years later, and some of the toughest things that should have been done were done. And I honestly believe, had these things been done, had the admin rules been completed, we wouldn't have, I don't think we would have saw what we saw in 2015 happen. Not necessarily the protests for the 30-meter telescope, but what I'll talk about, what happened on Mauna Kea in regards of building these things. They were never done. They should have been done. Another timeline put out there by the university, another timeline that was not met. These are the 13 telescopes on Mauna Kea. Actually, 14 were built. I know it's super hard to see, so just pretty much disregard this slide, but basically it has the years, what was built, how much it was built. The most expensive to date, about the 190 million Subaru telescope. The issues on the mountain in regards to the telescopes are that the telescopes that are not owned or managed by the University of Hawaii pay $1 a year lease for the use of the Mauna Kea lands. $1 a year ground lease until December 2033. Now the university pays gratis, or they don't pay anything. Free lease. And if you look in the master lease, it says gratis again. That they're looking at promulgating if you read the EIS. Now, I don't dispute that the University of Hawaii is part of the public trust doctrine as an institution of public education. But whether or not the University of Hawaii has the power or the legal authority to issue subleases for $1 a year to international observatories, foreign governments, mainland universities, is something I would debate and argue all day long. So why would we give $1 a year leases? Now, arguably, the telescope's going to invest hundreds of millions of dollars into our economy to build that telescope, right? Put people to work, construction jobs, business. What was the other reason we gave them $1 a year lease? What did we get in return? What did the university get? Astronomical viewing time. The university traded astronomical viewing time for its Institute for Astronomy for the $1 a year lease. We give you $1 a year lease, you give us time on the telescope. What would the university do at that time? Apply for National Science Foundation grants, bring in research dollars, attract the best astronomers in the world to IFA, build a world-class astronomy program with the time on the telescopes. They get anywhere between 7 to 15%. It's going to be about 7.5% for TMT. That averages 20 to 40 nights a year on every single one of those telescopes that the university utilizes time on. Several of the wealthiest foreign countries in the world exist on the Mauna Kea Summit. United Kingdom, Canada, France, Japan, Argentina, Brazil, and if TMT is approved, China and India. Now the subleases that the university issued to the international observatories do not include any stewardship component, any financial benefits package for the community. They also include no language that talks about commercialization or monetization of intellectual property rights. Now what is that? It's a big word. And I don't know if it exists or not. I'm trying to find out through questions and through an audit of the structure. These telescopes discover amazing things, right? They develop new technologies, adaptive optics being one of the things that is pioneered here through those telescopes and through IFA. Now, I don't know, and I'd like to know, are the technologies that are created or discovered, do they end up in electronic devices that we utilize? Do we sell the adaptive optics technology? Are there patents that exist? Are there revenues when we sell that technology to another telescope or another location? I don't know. That's been something that people have brought up. Patents. I'm trying to find out if one exists or not. But if they do, we are getting nothing from potentially millions of dollars of revenue of discoveries that happen on Mauna Kea. These are the Mauna Kea management areas. This brown area here is the 11,288 acre Mauna Kea Science Reserve. This area right here. The 4,000 acre or so NARS is this big triangle. This is where Lake Waiau exists. This is where the Ad Square exists. And there's also a small NAR here as well. This red box is the 525 acre astronomy precinct created in the 2000 science plan. The telescopes exist here on the summit, the highest point here as well. This section is called the Northern Plateau. That's where they want to site TMT. This is Waimea, to get you an idea of orientation. There's also a 70-acre, 400 yards on each side, non-exclusive access easement, which is basically the access road that goes from the summit down to Halepohaku, which is here. The university has a lease for just under 20 acres for the Halepohaku site, which exists a visitor center, an 80-bed dormitory, a full-on commercial kitchen, cafeteria, and classrooms or portable facilities that exist there as well. Now that is set to expire in 2041. This area is also dead. So if you take out this 525-acre astronomy precinct, this area here is what the university designates as a natural cultural preservation area. And in Governor Ige's 10-point plan, he talked about returning these lands to DLNR. And if any of you went to the EIS open house at Imiloa or in Waimea, you looked at the three boards or the three options for Mauna Kea, one of them is to return this 10,763 acres back to DLNR and to shrink the size of the astronomy precinct. Now, why would they want to do that? Why would you want to give all of these lands back? Why would you want to? Well, of course we know why they want this, because that's a summit. That's the most important part. It's the most valuable part. It's also the most culturally revered part. But why would you want to return all of this? Well, the reason why, in my opinion, is because that's where all the archaeological sites exist, beyond what exists at the summit. Those 263 documented archaeological sites, in order to be designated as one of those sites, must be more than 50 years old, historic preservation, and must be documented by an archaeologist. Now, the university did some great things, and one of them is from 2005 to 2009, they did an archaeological inventory study of the entire Mauna Kea Science Reserve. And that's where many of these items were documented, and the State Historic Preservation Division approved a monitoring plan. The bill that we proposed would never give all of this stuff back. One, DLNR, I don't think they want it. They don't have the resources to handle this. They don't have the people on the mountain to handle this. The university should be handling this. 50 years we should have been taking care of this area. Now we want to give it back, shrink the astronomy precinct, and just have the summit. That's one of the options. The university also has cross-boundary agreements and memorandums established with the Department of Forestry and Wildlife to help regulate, or I guess you could say steward, the NARS, right? Because somebody goes up there from the mainland, there's nothing that says, well, I don't know if there's a line that says you now enter the NARS, but people walk up there and they go all over the place. And so you need to make sure that they know where they're going. If you're entering the NARS or if you're not in the NARS, if you're headed to Lake Waiau, or if you're going to the ADSCORE. So there's already agreements to manage and steward all of these areas. But make no mistake, that is the highest concentration of archaeological sites that exist in Polynesia. One of the issues on Mauna Kea is multiple jurisdictional agencies that have no idea who is in charge. I have a laundry list of about 25 organizations, from the Board of Regents to DLNR to the Burial Council to SHPT. I mean, you can go on and on, but you can look at this chart, and I know it's something the university is trying to figure out. How do we delineate clear lines of authority? You know, we have the Research Corporation of the University of Hawaii, who gets millions of dollars from the telescopes. And what do? They hire choke people, well over 100 people. People that work at the Imiloa are employees of RCUH. The housekeepers in the cabins are employees of RCUH. The Mauna Kea Support Services manages Halepohaku. They fall under the Institute for Astronomy, not the Office of Mauna Kea Management. Then you have the UH Manoa Chancellor. You have the Institute for Astronomy that manages the MKSS. Then you have UH Hilo, whose direct line of authority is the Office of Mauna Kea Management. You have Kahuku Mauna. You have the board. You have the Graduate Students Association. You have master's students and postdoc students that are at IFA Manoa. You've got OHA, because they want their 20% revenue. You have DHHL. You cannot go up to Mauna Kea without going to the Humu'ula lands. But DHHL gets nothing for hundreds and hundreds of cars and people that go up to the mountain every single day. You have Imiloa, the educational piece. You got the mayor of the county of Hawaii, who thinks he can do something. You got the governor. He's trying to figure out what to do. And then you have the Mauna Kea observatories, that they're just trying to do what they want to do, and that's look at the stars and you know, and do their thing. You also have multiple land use regulatory platforms here as well. So this is one of the core issues, is how do you figure out a new management or delineate management structure that has clear lines of authority so somebody is in charge. These are the commercial tours on Mauna Kea. Like I talked about, we started regulating in 1995, started charging $2. In 2000, the university was given a power. In 2006, they raised it from $2 to $6. Today, there are, those revenues from commercial tour operators bring in about $350,000 a year to Office of Mauna Kea Management. It goes into the special fund. Those come from the $6 per head count individuals in those tours. What exists today is 8 permits, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it's 8 permits, 2 vehicles per permittee. You can put 14 people in a van plus the driver. So that's 15 people, 14 people in a van. Here's the breakdown. One summit tour, you can't see it, $180. So let's take a look at what one summit tour tonight on Mauna Kea costs. You put 14 people in that one van. Now you got 8 permittees, and each of them get 2 vans. One summit tour, $180 per person times 14 equals $2,700. Now out of that $2,700, 14 people, a part of that 180 is the $6, and they give that to Office of Mauna Kea Management. That's $84. Now who wants their cut out of the $84? OHA, Public Trust Doctrine, 20%. So they get $16.80. And at the end of the day, $2,600 goes to the operator, $67.20 goes to OMKM to do what they got to do, and $16.80 goes to Hawaiians. Astronomy has an impact in our economy. There's only 2 things really that drive and fuel our economy. It's tourism and the military. Right? We got to diversify beyond that. We're an island state. It's difficult. We have so much more potential. Astronomy is an economic engine for our state. This is 2014, Uhero, Carl Bonham. He sits on accounts and revenues. He's one of the brilliant economists at UH. They did a study on this astronomical impact. Brings in about $5 million of general fund revenues to the state via taxes. 800 jobs. About $170 million economic impact to the state of Hawaii. It's not a massive economic impact, but make no mistake. I mean, it does bring in jobs, revenue to the state of Hawaii. Decommissioning. Many of us have asked, hey, how come the telescopes kind of come down already? The governor said we're going to bring down 3, or 25% of them, that should be 3. Not easy to decommission a telescope. Why? It costs a lot of money. Anytime you do something on Mauna Kea, what do you need? More than likely, you're going to need an EIS, and you're going to need a conservation district use permit. That's guaranteed. So it takes time to do decommission. But in that CMP, that Comprehensive Management Plan of 2009, the university did 4 sub-plans. A natural resources management plan, a cultural resources management plan, a public access plan, and a decommission plan. And in that decommission plan, it talks about decommission telescope. It starts with a notice of intent to decommission, which 2 of the 3 telescopes, I believe, have already filed, actually, I'm sorry, 3 telescopes have already filed, or 2 of them, and 1 is waiting, have filed their notice of intent to decommission. That would be Caltech, University of Hawaii. Now, notice these dates here. When did we file the notice of intent to decommission? About 3 months after the mountain was shut down by Governor Ige after the 30-meter telescope protest. 2 NOIs were filed with the Office of Mauna Kea Management. The university has also commissioned to decommission the UCURT, and that was filed, I believe, in October of 2015. Now the DLNR has approved the first 2 NOIs. They've given guidance on that, but planning takes a long time. It takes over 5 years to plan to decommission. It also costs millions of dollars to decommission. When I asked one of the telescope representatives, hey, how much would it cost to decommission a telescope? Like $40 million. A lot of money. I asked, is there $40 million in the escrow account to decommission? No. So where are we going to get the $40 million to decommission? It's not part of our sublease to put money away to decommission, whether it's 2033 or 2078. but that doesn't exist in the subleases. Very expensive to decommission. Who approves the decommission? Final authority rests with the University of Hawaii president. Under its current management structure, President Lasner has to approve the decommission. He doesn't like the guidance given, he doesn't like the plan, he doesn't approve the decommission plan. The Mauna Kea protectors. Core issues on the mountain, Lanakila, Keaukaha. It is not about science and technology. It's not about Hawaiians versus astronomy. You cannot throw out that our ancestors navigated by the stars. I know that. I mean, it's used widely. It's wrong. To the protectors, the core issue is a desecration of a sacred place. That Mauna Kea is a vau akua. That the things that have happened on Mauna Kea is desecration. That the entire mountain is an ahu. That we violated Hawaii land use law and the public trust doctrine. That there has been adverse impact in a culture in the conservation district, just like the U.S. District Judge ruled in 2003. And their federal EIS confirmed in 2005. That there's unequal access to decision making, that decisions by the land board are already predetermined. And they're not happy that the dollar for aloha exists today. That the telescopes pay $1 a year lease, and we traded astronomical viewing time for those leases, with nothing going to the community, Native Hawaiians, to benefit our programs. Here's the protest timeline. TMT groundbreaking is stopped in October 2014, all the way to the August 2015 Aloha Aina Unity March. In June of 2015, and if we get there tonight, I can show it to you, the governor issues a 10-point plan. And I hope we talk about that tonight as well if somebody asks a question, because that happens right here when the governor stops everything in the summer of 2015. Admin rulemaking, EIS, everything shut down on the mountain. 53,000 sign a petition to the governor. Thousands of University of Hawaii students protest across all of its campuses on what's happening in Mauna Kea in 2015. Here's the 30-meter telescope. Some say I shouldn't even show this picture, but I think it's very important, and I'll explain why. The proposed construction site is the Northern Plateau. Why are we going to put it in the Northern Plateau? Because it's too big. It's 189 feet tall. It's over 18 stories. You cannot put it on the summit. Go to the planning department tomorrow. Ask to talk to the planning director, Mike Yee. Ask him, I want to build one building on the county of Hawaii, on this island. How high can I build it? 9 feet. Whether it's Banyan Drive or anywhere. What is the highest height restriction in the county of Hawaii per its general plan that you can build a structure on this island?
90 feet.
Wrong. 120 feet. Approximately 13 stories is the maximum height you can build on a hotel or anything, anywhere. But why are we putting a 189-foot structure on the summit of Mauna Kea? Because the county has no jurisdictional authority, because it's state land use conservation district. But you cannot build more than 120 feet on this island. One of the differences with TMT, it was supposed to get first light in 2018, is that it's going to be a zero discharge wastewater system. We talked about hydrology, we talked about the cesspools, the septic tank leach fields. TMT is going to be different. Self-contained, hold everything, and just like on an airplane, you bring the truck up, you pump them out, you haul them down. Today we haul water to the summit. I heard $10 a gallon. I'd like to have that job. $10 a gallon for 1 gallon to go to the summit of Mauna Kea. I don't understand why we cannot haul our waste down. Wastewater, discharge. We should. They talk about it in the CMP plan, but they say only if it's feasible. TMT is also going to be different because it's going to pay ground rent. First telescope to do so. $300,000 looks like a lot better than $1, right, Uncle Pat? How did we find out $300,000? Now, arguably, most construction, you don't pay when you start building, you pay when you pop. But TMT was going to be different. They were going to pay ground rent, $300,000 years 1, 2, 3, up to year 11, a little over $1 million, and then tied to CPI. My question was, how do we get these numbers? What is the valuation for these numbers? Because 171.17 says you should do an appraisal, either by an independent appraisal or by an appraiser of DLNR, to figure out what is the ground rent for the use of this public lands. There has never been an appraisal done on the 30-meter telescope. Never. Hallstrom did a report on it, but never did a full-blown appraisal. My question would be, how did you come up with $300,000? How did you come up with $1 million? Are we shortchanging ourselves? Are they paying too much? I don't know. Because the university never did an appraisal, and neither did the 30-meter telescope. It's the numbers that Hallstrom gave them. Now that's important for the valuation, because I'm going to show you the governor's 10-point plan, where he talks about this rent structure that could potentially be used when they negotiate the other telescope subleases. So these are important numbers. They exist in the TIO sublease today. It's what at the state Supreme Court. The state Supreme Court approves the TMT sublease. This is approved. How do you figure out ground rent? TMT site about 8 acres, 5 acres usable. That's a footprint, 5 to 6 acres. How do you figure out what is the ground rent for 5 to 6 acres on the summit of Mauna Kea? It's not a residential neighborhood. You can't do comparable sales. Ask a realtor. Hey bro, go give me one estimate. How much is the land worth up there? Very difficult to figure it out. How do you figure out what is an acre on Mauna Kea so that you can charge fair market ground rent? We're talking fair. We're not talking robbery. We're just saying what is fair, what is balanced. We don't know what those numbers are. So what is a metric that you can use? What is valuable? Time. Astronomical viewing time on the telescopes. What is a second on the Keck? What is an hour? What is a minute? What is a night on the Keck Observatory? Or the Canada France, or any of the other ones? In 2009, Yale University paid $12 million for 50 nights for the next 10 years on the twin Keck observatories. You do the math on that. What is $12 million divided by 15? Who's the smartest person in the room? 12 million divided by 15. $800,000. Divide that by 10 years. It comes out to $80,000 a night. That's what Yale University signed a contract with the Kecks in 2009. $80,000 a night. They also did an estimate on the Kecks in 2001, and they estimated $1 a second on the Kecks. $1 a second, $3,600 an hour, $28,800 a night. That's over an 8-hour observation period, over 252 nights a year. But it costs money to build a Keck, $192 million, over $78.2 million for its instrumentation. So how do you figure out these numbers? How do you get to what numbers is worth on Keck? Well, Keck in 2012 published these numbers. For one observation night was estimated to cost about $54,000. That's $1.87 a second, $112 a minute, $6,700 an hour, over 8 hours. That's $54,000 a night. At 252 nights a year, that's over $13.5 million on one telescope. They get 2. And over 574 nights a year, that's $30.8 million. I'm going to show you 2 more slides straight off from Keck. They calculate their time at 730 nights a year, 365. I asked one of my friends who's an astronomer up there and says, hey, you guys get 365 nights a year on the telescope? They say, no way. Get blizzards, get storm, get clouds. Average observation annually on the telescopes, about 252 nights a year. So this is how you calculate time on the Keck. From their website, you got to take how much it costs to build, how much the instrumentation costs, what is its annual operational maintenance, or to operate the Keck annually, right? You got to take how much it costs and its instrumentation time and amortize it. And they amortize it over 20 years for the development and 10 years for the instrumentation. So if it costs $192.3 million and you amortize that over 20 years, that's $9.5 million. We're looking at the annual cost here. The instrumentation is $78.2 million. You amortize that over 10 years. That comes out to $6.5 million. How much does it cost to annually operate the KEC? $14.8 million. So the total observatory cost for KEC is $30.8 million. Then you look at the total number of observation nights. Now, remember I said they use 365 times 2? So I don't think this number is right, but that's what they put on their website. So you take 730 nights a year. Now there's engineering time that they take right off of the bat, right? This is for maintenance, this is for whatever else to do. They're doing engineering stuff. That's 31 nights. Then you take the nights that the University of Hawaii was given. Remember the astronomical viewing time? That UH is part of their sublease? That's 7 to 15% on the average telescopes. Well, the university gets 85 nights on the KECs. Then you take the instrument engineering time, that's 40 nights, and so they allocate the number of nights available for allocation to the observatory partners is 574 nights. With an annual cost of $30.8 million and 570 nights available for observing, the cost of one observation night on a Keck telescope is $53.7 thousand, about 54 grand. Kind of, I mean, Yale paid 80 grand, they're calculating it at 54 grand. But they paid $1.
For a year.
For a year. The Keystone Report in 2007. The Gordon Betty Moore Foundation didn't put their name on this report, but they were behind it because they are a major funder of TMT. Hundreds of millions of dollars they're going to put in. My understanding, about 200. So if you're going to put in $200 million, you're going to want to know what is the risk of that investment, the risk of that bet. So they contract Peter Adler of the Keystone Center, interviewed 64 people, and they published this report. This is just a snippet of what the report says. If you haven't ever seen it, give us your email, I'll email it to you tonight. What it concludes is that high-level leadership is required, that the confusions and ambiguity within the UH system and between UH and BLNR create a decision-making vacuum, that fresh leadership is now essential, that given the long-standing history of distrust, of increased high-level political attention is needed on Mauna Kea. It also says, in 2007, if you guys go move forward on Mauna Kea with TMT, you better move so slow, you don't even know what slow is. They told them that. And if you read it, it's pretty much what they says. You got to take your time. But what did we do in September of 2010? We applied for the Conservation District Use Permit for TMT. In 1999, that Mauna Kea Advisory Committee that was created out of the 1998 audit, maybe some of us were on that advisory committee here. This is a page out of that 2000 Mauna Kea science plan that they published. And that says that, hey, we looked at alternative management. We looked at this management authority you're talking about. But we deemed, and because of multi-agency responsibilities, a third-party alternative was suggested. An independent commission looked at it, modeled after the Kaho'olawe Island Reserve Commission. But, although it was seriously considered, it was ultimately dropped as infeasible by the advisory committee because it would take legislation to authorize. They pretty much said, you know what, forget Kai and Chris. These guys too hot to deal with at the legislature, so let's not even go down that route. The idea of the University of Hawaii taking over, full control. How would we do that? Executive authority that lands from the governor over to UH. UH takes over.
To read the whole paragraph right there. The one not highlighted.
This one.
Up.
Up.
Yeah, to read it.
Let me read that.
To read, well, continue, right?
Okay.
Portion.
Create a whole new bureaucratic organization and require the agreement of the Board of Land and Natural Resources to implement. Like we keep going?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go down to the next.
To this one?
Yeah.
Also, preliminary discussions with the Board of Regents and the Board of Land and Natural Resources indicated that neither the board was willing or able to delegate the authority necessary to create a new agency with the suggested authority. Other management options that were discussed included DNR taking complete responsibility for management, but this idea was dropped when it was pointed out that DNR's statewide responsibility made it unlikely that sufficient resources would be available and dedicated to Mauna Kea. The idea of the, so now I'm where I was. Okay, so the idea of the University of Hawaii taking full authority and control over Mauna Kea was also suggested, but objections related to off-island decision-making. What is off-island decision-making? It means we're in this room here, and the University of Hawaii Manoa is 240 miles away. That's off-island decision-making. And that was dropped. What about lack of accountability to the local community resulted in this option being dropped? So they looked at alternative management schemes, but didn't go down that route. In 2009, this is the Mauna Kea Comprehensive Management Plan. This is the body, this is the source document that exists today. Like I said, I think it is a good plan. In the management responsibilities section, Chapter 3, they talk about, given that several entities share management responsibilities for the Mauna Kea lands, coordinated management of the mountain has been a challenge. We're acknowledging this in 2009, that presently both DLNR and the university are responsible for managing the UH management areas, and that the 2000 master plan acknowledged that joint management by DLNR and the university and layers of management requirements and recommendations outlined in leases, plans, permits, and written or verbal commitments have created a complex and often confusing pattern of management responsibility. Remember that spaghetti chart, the chart I showed you? That's what we're talking about here in 2009, in the document that exists today. Currently, there is no mechanism for integrated or coordinated management of Mauna Kea's resources. So what is the problem on Mauna Kea? This could be just my opinion, but this is the problem. That there's a broken trust within the community of the University of Hawaii, of IFA Manoa, and the Department of Land and Natural Resources, that 50 years of complacency on the mountain in regards to its stewardship and management and complete disregard for Native Hawaiian communities' concerns has eroded public confidence. That no matter what structure exists in the future, if it is the same structure that exists right now, the university will maintain exclusive control of the Mauna Kea Summit through OMKM, Manoa, IFA, the astronomy program, RCUH, and all these other entities. The $1 lease paid by the telescope operators is not their fault. That was negotiated years ago. It doesn't make it right. But that's the lease that was agreed to. But unfortunately, I'm sorry, it's an insult to the Native Hawaiian people, in my opinion. Commercial tourism with virtually unrestricted and undercharged access still exists today. It existed in 1995, it exists in 2018. I'm going to show you that. That caused safety issues on the mountain. It's overcapacity. Multiple agencies causing confusion responsibilities, a lack of leadership. The rangers have no enforcement powers or any mechanism to enforce anything on the Mauna. We have no admin rules. It's 2018. We have no administrative rules on the mountain. We gave them the power to do it in 2009. And the CMP immediate implementation action items have not been completed yet. Financial benefits not going to Native Hawaiians and local kids that need the most help. There's been a lot that has been done in the last few years. The Mauna Kea Scholars Program, it's too much things in my head. Universe, something up the universe. Journey through the universe. You know, the astronomy stuff we do at Kuhio Mall. The schools they go to. Great stuff, good stuff. But there's not enough. There's not enough in financial benefits going to Native Hawaiians and local kids from this community or from other underserved rural Native Hawaiian communities like where my family comes from that need the most help. That the monetization of technology and intellectual property rights, patents, if they exist, are potentially millions of dollars leaving our state that nobody's benefiting from. The state, the public, Hawaiians, the public trust doctrine. So what is the solution? This is not the ultimate solution. This is a plan. This is something that we have proposed, that the State Senate has proposed. That is to create a new management authority of Mauna Kea. That the state of Hawaii has a fiduciary responsibility to protect the rights of the general public and of Native Hawaiians, as well as be proper stewards of the public trust doctrine per the Admissions Act. We have a legal obligation, a moral obligation to that control of Mauna Kea must be removed from the University of Hawaii, from the Institute for Astronomy, and DLNR. We are not saying, IFA, you cannot have your telescopes up there that you use. We are not saying we're going to take your astronomical viewing time. We're saying, how do we create balance? How do we create something that is fair? Because it's not fair today. The 2018 legislature will create the management authority. It's going to be a state agency that will supersede all existing agencies on the mountain that exist today. It's going to be a single, centralized focal point agency for the management of Mauna Kea. The authority will determine and negotiate fair market lease revenue. We're going to do an appraisal on Mauna Kea that should have been done a long time ago. to figure out what is the fair market ground rent for those telescopes, because that's really where the revenue exists. And why do we need revenue? I'll talk about that in a second. We're going to follow our own laws, HRS 171-17. And if they don't make sense, then we're going to change them. Community benefits revenue will fund educational programs for local Hawaii children, with an emphasis on underserved, rural, at-risk kids. Educational programs that focus on science, technology, and not just those disciplines, but other disciplines will be funded. Workforce pipelines will be established. So what am I mean, there's all kinds of community benefits that could be funded. One of the things that is in the approved conservation district use permit as one of the requirements that the land board included was that $5,000 of the $1 million community benefits that goes to the Pauahi Trust and the Hawaii Community Foundation, $5,000 should go to a program on this island to help families that have incarcerated parents, where you have kids that have one parent that is incarcerated. A large amount of them are Native Hawaiians, so that the children can see their parents on the weekends. $5,000. I'm sorry, that's crumbs. It's nothing. But that's in the CDUP. This is the Mauna Kea Management Board. This board has been changed 100 times, and I'm sure it'll change after tonight. But it is not easy to come up with a board, 7 to 10 members, who appoints them, where should they come from, and how do you determine a board that addresses one of the key problems that exist today? Inherent conflict of interest. If you have a conflict of interest, you shouldn't be on a board. It must be fair, it must be balanced. There must be a nexus. The person sitting on the board should have a nexus to something on Mauna Kea. The current board as it exists in the bill today is a 7-member board appointed by the governor, limited to 2 terms for 4 years. 4 board members out of the 7 must come from Hawaii Island. These are subject matter experts in their fields of study. 2 Native Hawaiian traditional culture practitioners. This doesn't exist anywhere. I don't think, I would stand corrected if the Mauna Kea Management Board requires that 2 members or any members must be Native Hawaiian. I don't know the answer to that. Maybe one of them can tell us tonight. But I know, yes, Uncle Herman.
All what you say, it bothers me when you start into how much going to cost you with your plan that you want to do with the amendment authority, it's what you're talking about now. How much going to cost you with this very big thing to get out the university system? What you have now. I really want to know what's going to cost you, how long will it take you to implement the program?
Fair question. I'm going to get back to that question. I'm almost done, and then we can answer that question. I would like to know, does the Mauna Kea Management Board require a Native Hawaiian on that board? I'm serious. Does it require it? Yes. How many members? No. How many members are required to be Native Hawaiian on the Mauna Kea Management Board? Okay. No, I'm not talking the council and advisory committee. I'm talking the Mauna Kea Management Board. No, hold on with question. So, what I can tell you is the University of Hawaii Board of Regents does not require any member of the 15 members to be Native Hawaiian. The Department of Land and Natural Resources Land Board does not require anybody to be Native Hawaiian. They require 1 cultural practitioner. That's Sam Gon. Does not require to be Native Hawaiian. This board requires 2 Native Hawaiian cultural practitioners. There's nothing that limits all of these 7 from being Native Hawaiian. 3 of the 3 names that go to the governor come from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. This is the hardest part of the management board. What is another difficult piece? I want to pay them. Why do I want to pay them? I keep getting cracks for that. Well, I tell you why I want to pay them. This is not a volunteer board. This is a 8 to 5, 5 days a week, full-time job. I want subject matter expert in fields of cultural practitioners, business, environment, land, and an astronomer. And I want to pay you for your time so you can put food on the table for your family, because I want you to work hard. I don't want you to depend on anybody else but you to do your homework, which is why we eliminated the executive director. Because we don't need one. Because if the 7-member board is full-time, is a subject matter expert, it's now a part-time job for them, then they all should be there all the time. We should have quorum all the time. So that is a key component of the board, no executive director. The board selects the chair. Subject matter experts in their field of study. This is not a second job for somebody. This is a full-time job for somebody that can be on this board. This is the statewide community feedback that we're getting. This is as recent as last night in Waimea. People have issues with public access. I think you're going to find that is one of the biggest issues on Mauna Kea, public access. How should local Hawaii residents access the mountain that have been going up there their whole lives? Hunters, cultural practitioners. How should tourists access the summit? How should non-residents access the summit? The composition of the board, the selection process. They don't like the governor selecting the board. We've heard that over and over. We shouldn't pay the board members. I disagree. But that's feedback that we've been getting. Public lands issues. Why are you taking the lands out of Chapter 171 and putting it with the authority? That doesn't make sense to me either. I can explain that if you want to know. Commercial tours. Should we even have commercial tours on the summit of Mauna Kea? No. That's an issue that has come up. Why doesn't the Office of Mauna Kea Management handle this in-house? Why do we issue 8 permits to 8 operators? Boundaries. Where are the boundaries that exist? I'll show you what my thoughts are behind boundaries. How much is it going to cost? This is one expensive plan. This board going to cost $350,000 because we want to pay them. And how much do we want to pay them? What we pay Office of Hawaiian Affairs trustees, which is about $60,000 a year. And my thought is, bro, if you're going to be a field expert in your expert field of study, you're going to work full-time, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, put your heart, blood, and soul into Mauna Kea, then I should pay you for that. But people think we shouldn't do that. And we can take that out if we don't want to get paid. And the community educational benefits. People want to see more in the bill. We cannot put Punana Leo in the bill. We cannot put, Keaukaha Community Association a bill, because this is a bill that stays on the books for possibly perpetuity. And I'm not saying KCA not going to be around in 100 years from now, but they can't put organizations in the bill. We can designate where monies go to different programs, whether it's helping incarcerated children or allowing kids to go to Punana Leo, scholarships to go to the University of Hawaii. More revenue so that local kids, especially the beneficiaries of the public trust doctrine, Native Hawaiians, get the financial benefits of utilizing the mountain. What if we don't do anything? 2 more slides. Status quo, or actually I think 4 more slides. I should take out that word status quo. I was corrected last night for that, and I apologize if I offend anyone. When I say status quo, I mean if the existing management structure exists and continues today, status quo will continue. I never thought my dad was going to pass away at 73 years old. I never thought I would be in this position today at 43 years old. I never thought I would be in the state senate. I never thought I would be the chair of the Senate Committee on Higher Education. The first one ever from Hilo. I started my education at ACC because I couldn't get in anywhere else. I went to UH Hilo, I graduated from UH Manoa, I played volleyball for UH Manoa. I'm a proud University of Hawaii graduate. I challenge the university so that we can create a better institution of higher education. But I cannot comprehend for the life of me why the University of Hawaii, as an institution of higher education, wants to be a land manager on the most culturally revered, politically toxic, politically challenged lands arguably in all of Hawaii. I don't understand that. Management desecration, weak stewardship will continue. We can refer to the 2015 situation where a ahu-like structure was destroyed on Mauna Kea. We can talk about that if you want to as well. Virtually unrestricted access to the summit day and night. Go to Halepohaku right now, tonight. Arguably there's 300 people, they turn people away. The Daniel K. Inouye Highway is completed. More people are going to Mauna Kea every single day. 200,000 people, 40,000 cars. They've done studies on how much people are going to the summit. Unrestricted access, 24/7. No matter who you are or where you come from, you can drive to the summit in a rental car, in a 4x4 car, in a non-4x4 car. We get nothing from that. Zero. $1 lease for ceded lands continues until the subleases are renegotiated. We're not going to pay more than $1 because that's what our existing sublease says, and we're not going to pay more than $1 until we renegotiate a sublease, but we need a master lease for that, and we want to go for the next 45 years. Lack of leadership, clear lines of authority not established. Under the existing management structure, one of the issues to me is that because the university holds the master lease for the summit, they must be the signatory on all applications. Conservation district use applications must be signed by the Chancellor of the University of Hawaii at Hilo. Don Straney signed the CDUP in September of 2010. Well, we know where that CDUP went. Years and years of legal challenges, of attorneys' fees. Who pays for that? We have paid the university, you know, you can say the general public, has paid over $6.5 million to defend the 30-meter telescope. Where do we get $6.5 million? It's not in the state's general budget allocation to UH. We get it, the university gets it, from the research, training, and revolving fund grants that come into the university and the indirect costs that the university takes off of those grants and uses that to pay for the legal fees for any challenges, applications, permits, legal process. Now, we're not even talking the legal fees that DLNR has had to pay for, or the Attorney General for their attorneys. This has cost a lot of money under its existing management structure. What could we have done with the $6 million? That is university money. Hey, we could have converted Halepohaku, where 300 people a night, right now, using the restroom, to a zero-discharge wastewater system. Maybe we could have built a parking lot, which the university is trying to do. Instead, we're using it to pay for legal fees. A new management structure would not incur that cost. A major showdown on Mauna Kea is imminent, resulting in violence, mass arrest, and irreparable harm that lasts for generations. If there was something that stood out in my mind in 2015, was 4 Hawaiians, Lino Kamakau, Kekoa, Kahokahi, and Uncle Walter, amongst many, many others, that were standing there toe-to-toe in 2015. Hawaiians fighting Hawaiians. And I believe this is, Haleakala was nothing. This is the kaho'olave of this generation. And I mean that. If this gets approved, the AG is already posturing. The damage to our community, to families, is going to last for generations. I talked to one police officer who said he almost had to arrest his son, who was on the other side. That's something that hurts me as somebody who loves our island and loves our community. I don't want to continue to divide our community. The business community, the Hawaiian community, the environmental community, our STEM community, the telescopes on the mountain. Continue divided, fighting, all waiting in anticipation of what's going to happen with TMT. Waiting to see what the governor's going to do. Waiting to see what the Attorney General is going to do. Waiting to see what Mayor Kim is going to do. No education and workforce development pipeline for local kids. I've already talked about rural Native Hawaiian kids in underserved communities. What if we don't do anything? Illegal commercial tours were happening in 1995, and they're still happening in 2018. Because here's two illegal commercial tour operators cited last month, this is in the Tribune Herald, $2,500, and issued cease and desist orders by DoCare for operating illegal commercial tours on the summit of Mauna Kea, despite the 8 legal commercial tour permittees that run permits today. So we have access issues, people running tours up the mountain. Whether or not you agree or disagree with this bill, if you want to get involved, Senate Bill 3090 passed the Hawaii State Senate 25-0 and is currently sitting in the House of Representatives. It was given a single committee referral, the Finance Committee. Unusual, because it should have gone to higher ed, it should have gone to water land, potentially should have gone to government operations, but it went straight to finance, which tells you one of two things. The Finance Committee is either going to kill it, or the Finance Committee is using it as leverage. I don't know. But the deadline for the bill or this current strategy, is the 5th of April. The legislature adjourns on the 3rd of May. The bill, if in whatever shape or form if it's in a House bill or a Senate bill, we're going to conference on April 16th, and it will come out of conference on April 28th, and it will go to the full floor of both chambers for approval on May 3rd. Done. Legislature's over. Chair Luke, her number, her email, if that's who you want to contact, today is March 21st, you got to April 5th. Representative Todd sits on the House Finance Committee. So if you don't like this bill, or you do like this bill, go lobby him. Because I don't have a direct line to Representative Luke, but Representative Todd does. I put all the pressure on Chris. Last slide out of a long presentation. I want to read this quote. Read it with me. If there were a clear indication that things are in fact being restored, protected, and otherwise returned to balance and righteousness, then astronomical activities could carefully be re-evaluated and perhaps allowed to advance. Then astronomical activities only if balance was restored, if things were fair, maybe, not shall, maybe, could carefully be reevaluated and perhaps allowed to advance. Where do you think that quote came from? The 2001 Royal Order of Kamehameha and Mauna Kea Temple Report. In 2001, they told you. They told everybody. I will not dispute that that may not be their position today, that this plan is 17 years old. But in 2001, they threw a plan on the table and said, if you listen to us, because you never listened in 99, we moved forward in 2000 with the master plan, then we immediately filed for the Keck Outrigger project. But if you listen to us, you ho'olohe, maybe, astronomy can continue on Mauna Kea. But nobody listened. Disregarded. And in my opinion, that is why we are in this situation in 2018, where this is a train wreck waiting to happen. That's it. No, I'm sorry. I interviewed one Mauna member during that time period. Unless I see them, I don't feel like it's appropriate for me to say it.
This is not here. But the reason why I bring all these things up, Senator, because we're going to close at 9, and I'm going to leave at 9. I'm going to stand up, and I'm going to leave. But I'm going to tell you something. I said on the board 2 times. One I raised in Keaukaha. Fourth generation in Keaukaha. My great-grandparents, my grandparents, 1136, and I told Lamai that in 8 years, we're going to celebrate 100 years here. My grandparents and great-grandparents received it in 716, 1924. So in 716, 2024 times, 1,700 years. And we still there, our parents there. But I want to let you know why I brought that up. I heard everything from everybody, and I can tell you when I was a kid. But courtesy-wise, you should have come to us. So I was one of them, that's why I asked you to answer 2 times. And now, you did it come. And we always had 2 on the wall. And the Kahuku Mauna group, that was done You mentioned one name, I'm not going to say the name, but please, everybody here, to do your research, and you want to find out. And what bothers me, where are the former members? They were components. Some have passed away, but some of them are still working. And I think you should have talked to them. So it hurts me. Doesn't get paid. I donate a lot of time. So I'll let you know my issue. Okay? I was in the military. I retired in the military. I worked for government. And I retired from government. And I don't want to do that, but it hurts me. Because I work with you there, hand in hand. So I know there's people that want to do from there. That's the story. That's why I asked you, boss. Because why didn't people step to the plate and work this and transition these? The beneficiaries always been running. Give us this, I'm going to do this and everything. And all I see is just like baseball. Your first cycle, it doesn't work. And you're correct. The people are not here that did all this power here and everything. We are supposed to correct it. And that's why I sit on boards for the community, don't get nothing. I give that. That's the old school. I receive what I like. The more you give, the more you get. And that's our problem. Sorry, everybody here, I apologize if I said anything that will hurt you folks or anything. But I have to say, because we are all one Ohana family. Look at genealogy, or if you're sitting down, when you know who I am, look at genealogy, you're going to be shocked. And if you're doing something other than that, and you say everything came out of your mouth tonight about fighting, you didn't go forward, that's why I asked you, so that you can give me answers. If you cannot give me answers, then I figured because I was alone. And people in the community told me to go on, try to help the next generation. That's what I do. It's my grandchildren, my children, my grandchildren, great. That's why I get now. So if I'm fourth generation, my children are fifth, my grandchildren are sixth, and my sister and great grandchildren. I come from a family of 10, 7 boys, 3 girls. So that's where I am, and all of you in there, I'm so sorry that all of you in there, I give you all my responsibility. You all get up to your family. If you get any question, you can call me anytime. If you want to make it right, I'll help you make it right. But I will tell you right now, this ain't going to go nowhere. That's why I ask you money. It's always money. Because something come and go. We talk about the same plan, that mountain. I done it, I did it, I was on a commission, down below. That's why it's not my last question. So it's not a problem. It's so easy. Did you talk to the White Commission, Commissioner, and the Director? Did you make an appointment to talk about, you're talking about the time. Did you make any view, if you had planning concern, did you talk to them?
Yes.
Okay, so you unite.
I talked to one Hawaiian commissioner.
Okay, no, I'm talking about all. Because you
not
need,
talk to all.
okay, you need to talk to all, because you need 5 votes to get anything that you want. You need 6 votes to get a 70 cents. So that's what I'm telling you. I walk a talk. I was on a commission, I served 8 years. 1997 to 2005. When you get time, I'll show you, I have places on this land that are example. All you have to do is look at it and go build it. And you will check me out. You check me out. When I was school, you will check me out. When it's built, and you get a history where it was supposed to be built. I'm sorry for telling that.
No.
And I apologize.
Don't need to apologize.
Thank you very much because I did it.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Oh, I'm going to cut in line. I like talk now. So, thank you, Uncle Aaron. The house, 3019 not going to no place. The house, what? The house, no. Thanks, God. Because the house, no, they're going to listen to the people. Majority of the people said no to this bill. They're listening, the house listening to the rumbling going on over here. For me, it hurts. I apologize if I want to say stuff, I want to step on people's toes. I'm sorry. Calamine, forgive me. When you get elected, don't forget where you come from. Who voted for you? The aha that was held here was all power, really. They made 3090 before it came to us. That's what pissed me off. We decide our destiny. The Mauna belongs to all us Kanakas, for the whole world that Mauna belongs to. But we Kuleana here, our Kuleana here first. Show the respect, as what Herring was saying. Come to us first. Make us help you decide the plan. No go outside for determine how we going here. I hear with all these guys I love. I love Brother Hank here. Oh, Brown. If he never give me the report from House of Lorna, I don't know where all the Ahus stay. It's my job for Kuleana the Ahus on the Mauna. No food, no more Ahus up there. That map Hanale gave the Keaukaha Mauna committee, get all the makas all over. You put more makas up there, you lose the Ike. You lose the manao from our kupunas. No disrupt stones already, pow! No go touch the stones up there. Use other ways for go stop construction. Because no knock them down, don't start with me, girl. Because you guys don't know. I get Poliahu, that's my line. I get Kuleana on the Mauna. I go up there since I was small. My two guys take me up there to do our Kuleana. I'm not here to teach anybody what I believe, what I know. I'm not here to change what you believe. But protect what is up there now. That's important. It's important. So the house is listening to what we're saying. I like fix a relationship in our community first. Because I gotta see you guys every day wherever I go. My heart is Kuhio. What he will do to better our people in the future. And when you know any improvement to the land belong to the people. Belong come back to the department. Same thing, in the future you will never know how valuable the telescopes can be for our future generations. Maybe today we don't like them. Maybe tomorrow our kids might like them. Do not deny them the opportunity, is what I say. Help them succeed in the international market of this whole world. We global people, we fortunate we have the Mauna in our inventory. We lucky. Let's use it to bring up your manao now on this, but that's what's going on. How many of you sit on the central committee know? Did the department bring you that we like give you guys the building? That we like connect between Umuula and the summit? Discussion's been going on 5 years. Does the central committee know that? We like make core trees. We get all these things. We like make my money start. All these things going. We like take off the cesspool. We like do all that. I started there 2012, 2013. I was on a chair with Brother Gabe was on my committee with the unions. 2004 I started with TMT. Another year, we started all the arguments will bring the benefits to the Kiki. Clean the mountain, take the shit off the mountain. That was from the Labor Central Committee where all the labor unions did. I retired LW. Dollar with love was power. There was one issue we talked about a long time ago. Dollar with love was power. I'd rather be in the tent pissing out than outside pissing in and making all this hakaka. No can. I go in, I negotiate all over. That was my job. All the hotels, all over the place was. To bring better benefits for the working people. This is one of the benefits. Whether you like it or not, it's one benefit. I know the cultural significance of the Mauna. I go up there every year in small time. So please, I'll hear you, Manao. Come, share. Any questions? Ask questions. Thank you. Come.
Thank you. Before we get to questions, it's 9:07. I don't know what time we gotta leave here.
I'm gonna leave that to you.
I already missed my daughter's second birthday. No, I can't. I have no problem staying to answer questions. You know, I want to say one thing first, though. I have no lineal ancestral ties to Mauna Kea. My kupuna are not buried on Mauna Kea, at least that I know of. I was never taught that I have a genealogical connection like some other people do to Mauna Kea. My family, my ancestral home is Middle East, fishing family. Kaheles, Kaupikos, Ishibashis. I have no interest at all in Mauna Kea, except what I feel is my obligation as a Native Hawaiian and as an elected member of this community, or not even an elected member of this community, just a member of this community that loves this community, this island, to try and make something better on Mauna Kea. I honestly hope that if the bill doesn't move forward, that things change, that the university has learned from this. They've come to these discussions. I appreciate that. These are tough issues they have to deal with. And so, I just wanted to throw that out there. So you can definitely ask questions. I would prefer if we ask questions, because I know if other people have lots of questions, and Representative Todd can answer questions. I have my legislative staff here as well. We should ask the question so we can get to the answer. Not that I'm saying you can't stand up for 10 minutes and share your mana'o. If you want to, you can. And if we stay here all night, I got no problem with that either. But I got to catch on flight at 7 o'clock. Uncle Kimo, go ahead.